Finally, we put the question, is Canada back, to some students of international affairs. They're from Simon Fraser University and UBC. Here's some of their perspectives on Canada's foreign affairs strengths and weaknesses.
I'd say that Canada's back when it comes to rhetoric. What Trudeau has really done is amped Canada's presence. He's a really charismatic leader, of course, so he brought a lot of public attention and just, really promoted Canada in a way that Stephen Harper hadn't, being more conservative, being more inward-looking. With Trudeau, we've seen more of an emphasis on, promoting liberal values, getting out there, focusing on multilateralism, relations between countries. But a lot of it's been rhetoric. We've seen not a lot of follow-through when it comes to some of the promises that he's made. With the Canadian government, I do think that one of our major priorities thus far has been preserving our relationship with the U.S. It's taken up a lot of our foreign policy energy, a lot of our time, because it's such an important relationship that we have, especially when we're so reliant on American trade. But now that we have pushed through a trade deal, I would like to see Canada branch out and focus on other relations with different countries. Because we've spent so much time focusing on our foreign policy with the United States, we've kind of neglected some of our relationships with other countries on the international stage.
The current Canadian government can focus on, especially in the aftermath of the US-Mexico-Canada agreement and the negotiations that took up a lot of bandwidth in Canada, it can focus on standing for, loudly and noisily, the protection of a global order that builds on the rule of law as well as protects rights and a rules-based world order. So the rule of law is important. It's important for Canada to stand for these principles on the global stage, while at the same time avoiding a singular and isolated approach to specific issues of human rights or morality. So to try and build cooperation, to bring more people to the table and gain greater understanding between different cultures, between different countries. I believe that Trudeau's current bid for the UN Security Council seat matters less than the principles that Canada stands for in the global world order. So again, it's important that Canada continues to advocate for the rule of law, for a rules-based international order, and if Canada as a middle power and as an active and engaged country is able to stand for those principles, regardless of whether it has a UN Security Council seat, I believe that Canada's influence on the world, its influence in building coalitions and building a greater sense of global cooperation will continue to be strengthened and will continue to improve.
I think there are quite a few challenges that the Canadian government faces and a few shortcomings. I think one of them is to address the human rights violations, particularly ones that happened in Myanmar with the Rohingya community, and secondly, what is happening now in China in Xinjiang. It's a western province of China with a majority Muslim population. Current reports say that up to 1 million Xinjiang Muslims are in internment camps or re-education camps. This crisis has sort of gone under the radar, and with Canada's commitment to liberal values, promotion of human rights and democratic values, our inability to respond to these challenges is definitely a shortcoming. I absolutely agree with this bid. It will make a difference. However, I'm doubtful if this bid will be successful. As we have seen over the past little while, how things have been turning out. Norway and Ireland are better positioned to win that seat. I think in terms of Canada's bid, our abstention on the Jerusalem vote, so the condemnation by the United Nations, President Trump's decision to move the US Embassy to Jerusalem, and Canada's abstention on that will hurt us in getting votes from the Gulf countries. Similarly, the sort of a little Twitter storm fiasco that occurred with Minister Freeland and her tweet about the protection of human rights in Saudi Arabia and the fallout from that. That diplomatic fallout will also hurt us in getting important votes that are necessary to be on the council.
I think that under Trudeau, Canada has been very successful in cultivating a progressive international image. As a middle power, their influence relies on pushing liberal norms and values throughout the world and keeping greater powers in check through this. I think a positive example of this progressive policy is the Feminist International Assistance Policy, which was released in 2016. Under this policy, the Trudeau government has made great steps in advancing the cause of gender equality throughout the world in both developing and developed countries. If Canada is to really take a place at the international stage, then they will have to back up their rhetoric and their narrative with concrete action. For instance, Canada is seen as a relatively green country throughout the world, and yet the Trudeau government has spent $4.5 billion nationalising the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So there is some kind of dissonance between their talk and the actions which they follow through on. Canada is very loud in advocating for human rights. However, if you come back home in a domestic setting, they are yet to ratify the UN Declaration on the Rights for Indigenous Peoples. So I think to avoid accusations of hypocrisy, there is a lot that the Trudeau government could do at home in order to create a strong base to then profess their liberal values abroad.